I never thought I would live long enough to see the day when my own family treated me like a burden, like a piece of furniture to be pushed aside when it became inconvenient. But that is exactly what happened. And it all began with a door. Not just any door, the door of my own bedroom. The door that my daughter-in-law closed and locked from the outside, as if I were some prisoner to be contained, rather than the woman who had built this house brick by brick with her husband's sweat and my endless sacrifices. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I remember the smell of polish on the wooden floors, the faint sound of the television echoing from the living room, and the way my arthritis made every step ache as I shuffled toward the kitchen. I only wanted a glass of water, just a simple glass of water in my own home. "Where are you going, Mother?" Her voice came sharp from behind me. I turned, startled, to see her standing there with her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a line that looked more like contempt than concern. "To the kitchen," I said softly. My voice has never been loud. It was my husband who had the booming laugh, the commanding presence. Mine was always the gentler voice. But now even gentleness seemed to irritate her. "You don't need to be wandering around," she snapped. "Stay in your room. It's safer for everyone. Safer. As though I were some kind of danger to them." I frowned. "Safer? This is my house. Why should I be confined to one room?" She rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath, then pushed past me. A moment later, I heard it, the unmistakable click of a lock sliding into place. I turned back, staring at the door handle, my heart sinking as the reality set in. I was locked in. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Maybe she was just trying to keep the grandchildren from running in and out. But the hours stretched on, and no one came to unlock it. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the walls, listening to the muffled laughter of my family just beyond the wooden barrier. They laughed, they ate, they lived, while I sat in silence with nothing but my own heartbeat for company. The humiliation burned deeper than any physical pain. I pressed my palms together, trying to steady my breathing. I thought of my husband, his strong hands, his reassuring voice. "No matter how hard life gets, Margaret, you'll always have this house. This is your castle." His words rang cruelly in my ears now. My castle had turned into a cage, and the guards were not strangers. They were my own blood. Time crawled. I watched the sunlight shift across the carpet, inch by inch, until the room was swallowed in dusk. Dinner time came and went. I could hear dishes clattering, chairs scraping, the low hum of conversation. And then her voice slicing through the walls like a knife. "She needs to learn her place." My throat tightened. I had never been spoken about like that, not by family, not by anyone. Hours later, the door creaked open. She stepped in, carrying a plate of food. Cold potatoes, overcooked meat, and a glass of water. She set it on the dresser without looking at me. "Eat," she said flatly. "I want to sit at the table," I whispered. "With my son. With the children." She turned her head slowly, her eyes sharp and cruel. "That table is for family. This is for you, family," as though I were no longer part of it. I looked down at the plate, then back up at her. My hands trembled, not from age this time, but from rage boiling beneath the surface. "This is my house," I said, my voice low. "And you will not treat me like a prisoner," she smirked. "Sign the papers and maybe we'll let you live a little freer. Until then, stay in your room." The door shut again, the lock clicking once more. I stared at the food until tears blurred my vision. I couldn't eat. I couldn't swallow the bitterness. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought of the years I had spent raising my son, the nights I stayed awake to soothe his cries, the meals I skipped so he would have enough to eat, the dreams I gave up so his could flourish. And now this, the child I sacrificed everything for, allowing his wife to treat me as though I were nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. The pain was unbearable, but beneath it, something else stirred. A flicker of fire. Small, faint, but undeniable. I may have been locked in a room, but my spirit was not chained. They thought this door was the end of me. But in truth, it was only the beginning. Because when someone locks you away, they forget one important truth. Walls have ears, doors have cracks, and silence can be the loudest weapon of all, and I would use it. The days after that lock clicked shut blended into one another, each one dripping with the same slow poison of neglect and humiliation. My world shrank to 4 walls and a window that looked out onto the garden I once tended with love. I would sit by that window for hours, staring at the roses wilting in the sun, remembering how my husband used to kneel in the dirt with me, his big rough hands patting the soil as he said, "Flowers, like people, need care. Neglect them, and they wither." Now I understood exactly what he meant. Meals arrived irregularly. Sometimes cold, sometimes late, sometimes not at all. My daughter-in-law would crack the door open just wide enough to shove in a tray, never looking at me, never speaking more than a word or two. My son rarely came at all. His absence cut deeper than her cruelty. Silence from a stranger is bearable. Silence from your own child is unbearable. I began to notice the walls around me weren't just silent. They whispered. Not in voices of their own, but in the muffled echoes of life outside. Through the thin wood of the door, I heard them laughing, talking, planning. One evening, I caught her voice, sharp and impatient. She's stubborn. But once she's weak enough, she'll give in. Everyone breaks eventually. And then his voice, low and hesitant. Are you sure this is the right way? She scoffed. Of course it is. She's too old to understand. We'll have control soon. You'll see. I sat frozen, my heart hammering. They weren't just trying to silence me. They were waiting for me to fade away, to wither like those roses outside my window, until I was too weak to resist. The next morning, she left my breakfast on the dresser without a word. I forced myself to speak, my voice trembling but clear. Why are you doing this to me? She stopped, her hand on the doorframe, and looked over her shoulder with a cold smile. Because you're too old to know what's best. This is for your own good. My throat tightened. This is not good. This is a cage. Her smile widened, cruel. Then consider yourself safe inside it. The door slammed and I was alone again. Days stretched into weeks. My world became the rhythm of the clock ticking on the wall, the footsteps in the hallway, the whispers that floated under my door. At night I lay awake, listening to the house breathe around me. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled conversation was another reminder that I was living, but not alive. One afternoon, I heard her laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was sharp, triumphant. She's fading, she told someone. Soon she'll have no fight left. And then everything will be ours. My chest ached. Tears spilled onto my pillow. But as I cried, I also listened. Every cruel word they spoke became fuel. Every insult, every whisper about my weakness became a weapon I stored quietly in my heart. I began to remember things. My husband teaching me how to balance the checkbook, how to read contracts, how to spot a lie in the fine print. Knowledge is armor, he once told me. At the time, I didn't realize how true that was. Now locked in that room, I understood. My strength wasn't gone. It was waiting. One evening, my son finally came. He opened the door, standing awkwardly with his hands shoved into his pockets. For a moment, I thought I saw the boy I raised, the child who used to bring me wildflowers from the yard. But then he spoke, and the illusion shattered. "Mom," he said, not meeting my eyes, "just sign the papers. It'll make things easier for everyone." I looked at him, my voice breaking. For everyone? Or just for her? His face darkened, shame flickering for only a second before it was replaced by anger. "Don't make this harder. You're old. You can't handle things anymore." I shook my head slowly. No, what I can't handle is being betrayed by my own child. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted away, and then he left, slamming the door behind him. That night, I pressed my ear to the wall again. Their voices floated through. "She won't last long," she muttered. "Once we get the house, we'll send her off. Let some home deal with her. Out of sight, out of mind." My body trembled. They weren't just planning to strip me of dignity. They were planning to erase me entirely. But the walls that whispered their cruelty also whispered something else to me. Truth. And truth is stronger than lies. I sat on my bed, clutching the edge of the blanket, and made a silent vow. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was powerless. But they forgot one thing. I have lived longer than their lies, and I know how to listen. The walls whispered of betrayal, but it wasn't enough to hear. I needed proof. Proof that would speak louder than their lies. Proof that no one could ignore. I may have been locked in a room, but I was not blind. And I was certainly not finished. It began with paper. One morning, when my daughter-in-law opened the door to drop in a tray, I noticed she carried an envelope tucked under her arm. She didn't see me watching. When she left, the faint smell of ink and glue lingered in the air. Later, when she walked back down the hall, I heard the faint rip of paper being torn, the shuffle of documents hidden hastily in drawers. I began to pay attention to details I once would have dismissed. Dates on envelopes, the return addresses stamped in bold letters, even the tone in her voice when she reminded my son to mail those forms. The patterns didn't add up. They were moving money, shifting property, building a paper trail they thought I would never see. But cracks always appear, no matter how carefully you paint the walls. One afternoon, she left a letter on the kitchen counter while she answered a phone call. I watched through the crack of the door as she paced with the receiver pressed to her ear. Yes, it will all be ours soon. She won't know the difference. Her laughter sliced through me like glass. When she left the room, I slipped out silently. My cane steadied me as I crossed the floor, my heart hammering. I picked up the letter, my fingers trembling. It was a bank notice. Large withdrawals. Transactions under my name, but the signature scrawled at the bottom. Oh, I knew that wasn't mine. My hand might shake from age, but it had never curved like that. It was a forgery, as clear as day. I pressed the letter to my chest, my knees weakening. This wasn't just neglect. This wasn't just cruelty. This was theft. Deliberate, calculated theft of everything I had built. I returned to my room and opened the old chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were the papers my husband and I had guarded for decades. The deed to our house, old wills, bank records. I laid them side by side with the letter I had taken. The difference screamed at me. His neat penmanship, my careful strokes, against their clumsy, greedy forgeries. I whispered into the empty room. You thought I wouldn't notice. But I see you. From that day, I began to keep a notebook hidden beneath the loose floorboard under my bed. Every detail went inside it. Dates, times, conversations I overheard, receipts they left in the trash. Like a detective in my own home, I pieced together their crime while pretending to be helpless. At night, when the house grew quiet, I pressed my ear to the wall and listened. My daughter-in-law's voice was always sharp, impatient. Why is it taking so long? We need her signature or this will all fall apart. And my son, softer, weaker, replied, She won't sign. She's too stubborn. Her answer chilled me. Then we'll wear her down until she does. Wear me down. That was their plan. Strip me of dignity, trap me in silence, starve me of respect until I had no fight left. But what they didn't understand was that I had been worn down before, by poverty, by grief, by life itself. And I had always risen again. The more they plotted, the sharper I became. I found ways to gather pieces of their scheme. When they forgot to lock the desk, I opened the drawers, memorizing what I saw. Loan applications with my name, property transfer drafts that erased me from existence, bank slips showing money disappearing like water down a drain. Each discovery cut me deeper, but it also stitched me stronger. Still, I knew paper alone wasn't enough. I needed an ally, someone beyond these walls who would believe me. That chance came one morning when I stood by the window and saw Mrs. Wilson, my neighbor, tending to her garden. She glanced up and our eyes met. Her brows furrowed as if she could see the weight in my chest. That afternoon, when she brought over a pie, I whispered to her as she handed it through the cracked door. I need help. I need you to call Mr. Kent. She didn't hesitate. She just nodded. Mr. Kent was my husband's old lawyer, a man I trusted. When he came the following week, my daughter-in-law sneered at him, but she let him in. "She's not well," she said dismissively. "Wasting your time." But when he stepped into my room, his eyes softened. He leaned close as I slipped the forged letter into his hands. His brows knitted as he examined it. "Margaret, this isn't your writing. They've crossed a line." Tears welled in my eyes, but my voice came out steady. "I need proof. I need to fight back," he nodded. "Then we'll gather everything. Quietly, patiently. Timing is everything." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. That night I lay in bed, clutching my notebook to my chest. They thought they had locked me away, silenced me, erased me. But cracks had formed in their lies, and through those cracks, light was seeping in. I wasn't defeated. I was preparing, and when the time came, I would make sure the truth shone so bright it burned them. Silence can be mistaken for defeat, but in my case, it became my armor. They thought my quietness meant surrender, but in truth, every nod, every meek smile, every shuffle of my slippers was part of my disguise. Inside, I was wide awake. Mr. Kent had given me strength the moment he confirmed what I already knew. Their documents were forged. Their signatures fake. Their empire built on lies. He told me patience was my weapon, and so I wielded it carefully. I began to sharpen the performance they expected of me. At the dinner table, I moved slowly, letting my fork clatter against the plate as if my hands no longer obeyed me. My daughter-in-law smirked. "She's fading," she whispered to my son. "Soon she'll give us everything." I lowered my eyes, hiding the fire burning behind them. Every cruel word, every mocking glance, I let them believe they had crushed me. But beneath the surface, I was gathering proof, piece by piece, like a bird weaving a nest from scraps others would call useless. Mrs. Wilson became my lifeline. She slipped me newspapers, whispered updates through the gate, even passed me a small tape recorder hidden in the bottom of a pie tin. "If you can catch them talking, we'll have more than just papers," she said. And so, I listened. One evening, through the thin walls of the house, I heard them in the living room. My daughter-in-law's voice was sharp, irritated. "Why hasn't she signed yet? We need this finished before the end of the month." "She's stubborn," my son replied. His voice trembled, not with compassion, but with fear. "What if she finds out about the withdrawals?" "She won't," she snapped. "She's too blind to notice. We'll drain everything before she even realizes it's gone." I pressed record, my fingers trembling, the little red light blinking like a heartbeat in the dark. Their words became mine, captured forever, evidence they couldn't erase. The next day, I pretended weakness more carefully. I shuffled around the house, muttering softly, letting them see me fumble with simple tasks. My daughter-in-law laughed when I spilled water on the counter. "See, she can't even pour a glass without making a mess. Imagine her handling bills." I smiled faintly, wiping the spill. "You're right," I said softly. "I'm useless." Her laughter echoed through the kitchen, cruel and triumphant. She didn't notice me glance at the bank statement she had carelessly left on the counter. Numbers circled in her handwriting. Another piece of the puzzle. Mr. Kent met me secretly once a week, sometimes at his office, sometimes in the corner of the church after Sunday service. I would slip him documents, recordings, notes from my hidden notebook. He examined everything with meticulous care. "This is enough to start a case," he told me one evening. "But the longer we wait, the stronger it becomes. Keep going." So I did. I collected receipts from trash bins, copied dates onto scraps of paper, even memorized conversations when I couldn't record them. Every time I added to my notebook, I felt stronger. Less like a prisoner, more like a soldier preparing for war. But the act of silence wore heavy on me. Nights were the hardest. I lay in my bed, listening to the creak of the house, the laughter of my family without me, and wondered how many more days I could endure. Yet even in those moments, I remembered my husband's voice. You are stronger than you realize, Margaret. Don't let anyone bury you alive, I whispered to the darkness. I won't. The shift came one evening when my son entered my room, his face drawn and nervous. He shut the door behind him and lowered his voice. Mom, just sign the papers. It will make things easier. I looked at him steadily, my heart breaking but my voice sharp. Easier for who? For you, for her? He flinched, eyes darting toward the door. She only wants what's best. I cut him off. No, she wants what's mine, and you're letting her take it. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt flicker in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by anger. He stormed out, slamming the door. I sat in silence, my chest heavy. That was my son, my little boy, the one I had once held against my chest when he was sick, the one who used to slip drawings under my pillow. And now he was a stranger, blinded by greed. Tears filled my eyes, but I wiped them away. Not yet, I whispered. Cry later. Fight now. The next day I left the house earlier than usual. My daughter-in-law was too busy on the phone to notice. I shuffled down the street to Mr. Kent's office, my cane tapping on the pavement, each step a declaration that I was not beaten. He looked up from his desk as I entered. Margaret, he said, surprise in his voice. I set the recorder on his table. They confessed. Not to me, but to themselves. I have it. He pressed play and their voices filled the room. My daughter-in-law's sharp tone, my son's nervous replies. Mr. Kent's eyes hardened. This is it. This is what we needed. For the first time in months, I allowed myself a real smile. Not the faint, broken one they were used to seeing, but a smile of triumph. When I returned home, my daughter-in-law was waiting. She eyed me suspiciously. Where were you? I lowered my gaze, feigning weakness. Just walking. I needed air, she laughed, shaking her head. Old fool. You can barely walk. But inside I was laughing too. Because what she didn't know was that every step I took outside that house brought me closer to freedom. And soon, the silence I had endured would shatter into a storm, loud enough to drown her lies forever. The courthouse smelled of old wood and dust, the kind of place where secrets were stripped bare and masks finally fell away. I walked through its heavy doors with my cane tapping against the stone floor, each step echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. For months I had been silent, humiliated, underestimated. But today, my silence would end. My son and his wife sat at the defense table, dressed in expensive clothes, looking polished, proud, untouchable. My daughter-in-law's lips curved into that same cruel smirk she wore the night she locked me in my room. Her eyes flickered over me with mockery. Old woman, they seemed to say, you don't belong here. But she was wrong. This courtroom was the only place I belonged now, because here, the truth would finally speak. The judge entered, his gavel cracking once. Order in the court. Their lawyer rose first. He was smooth, rehearsed, his words gliding like oil. Your Honor, my clients only sought to care for their aging mother. She is frail, forgetful, no longer capable of managing finances. Out of love, they took the necessary steps to protect her interests. Love. Protection. Such pretty words, dressed like angels, hiding the devil beneath. I sat still, hands folded, listening as the lies poured like poison into the room. My son kept his eyes low, ashamed or perhaps afraid, while his wife sat tall, unflinching, convinced of her victory. Then Mr. Kent rose. His voice was calm, deliberate, but I knew the steel beneath it. With respect, Your Honor, this case is not about love. It is about betrayal. It is about fraud. The first piece of evidence flashed across the courtroom screen, my bank statements. Pages of transactions, large withdrawals, purchases of jewelry, luxury items, signed with a name that was supposed to be mine. The judge peered down at me. Mrs. Harris, did you authorize these? I rose slowly, my knees trembling, but my voice steady. No, Your Honor, not a single one. Those signatures are not mine. A ripple of murmurs filled the courtroom. My daughter-in-law shifted in her seat, her smirk faltering for the first time. Next came the handwriting expert. He displayed side-by-side comparisons of my real signature and the forgeries. The difference was undeniable. Even to the naked eye, the slants, the strokes, the pressure, it was a lie inked in greed. "This is not Mrs. Harris's hand," the expert said firmly. "These documents are fraudulent." My son's face drained of color. His wife whispered furiously in his ear, her fingers tightening into fists. Mr. Kent continued, "But that is not all, Your Honor. We have recordings." The tape played, their voices filling the courtroom. She's too blind to notice. "We'll drain everything before she realizes." "Just sign the papers, Mom. It'll make things easier for everyone. Once we get the house, we'll send her off." "Out of sight, out of mind," gasps echoed. The walls themselves seemed to recoil. My daughter-in-law shot to her feet. "That recording is fake. She's lying." Mr. Kent's eyes flashed. "We can authenticate it. The timestamps, the device, everything checks out." The judge banged the gavel. "Order!" Mrs. Wilson, my neighbor, took the stand next. Her voice was steady, unwavering. I heard them. I heard her say they would take everything once she signed. I brought food to Margaret and saw how they treated her, like a prisoner in her own home. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Finally, it was my turn. I rose from my chair, clutching the table for support. My voice shook at first, but as the words spilled out, strength rose in me. They told me to be grateful. Grateful to eat alone in my room. Grateful to be mocked, to be erased from my own life. But I am not blind. I am not senile. I am a woman who built her life brick by brick with her husband, who raised a son with love and sacrifice, only to be betrayed. And I will not be stolen from. My son stood abruptly, his face red. "She's lying." "She doesn't remember." I cut him off, my voice sharp as steel. "The only thing I don't remember is when you stopped being my son." The courtroom fell silent. My words hung in the air like a blade. The judge's eyes hardened. He leaned forward, voice grave. "I have heard enough." He read the verdict slowly, each word falling like stones. "This court rules in favor of Mrs. Margaret Harris. All property and assets are restored to her name. Furthermore, the defendants are charged with fraud and will face criminal consequences." The gavel struck one final time. My son slumped in his seat, his face buried in his hands. His wife sat frozen, her smirk gone, her eyes wide with shock and fury. The image of their downfall burned into me, not with joy, but with the satisfaction of justice delivered. As I lowered myself into my chair, tears spilled freely. Not of sorrow, but of release. For months they had tried to silence me, to bury me alive. But here, in this courtroom, my voice had risen louder than their lies. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of victory. When the gavel fell for the last time, the sound followed me long after I left the courtroom. It wasn't just wood striking wood. It was the sound of a door unlocking, a cage breaking open, chains falling away. For months I had been trapped, silenced, humiliated. But now, as I walked out into the sunlight, I carried something they could never steal back from me. My freedom. The air outside tasted different that day. Fresher, sharper, almost sweet. I closed my eyes for a moment, tilting my face to the sky, letting the warmth of the sun seep into my skin. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive again. Mr. Kent walked beside me, steady and sure, his voice low. "You did it, Margaret. You stood taller than anyone expected." I smiled faintly, my voice measured. "No, we did it. You gave me the weapons." "I just remembered how to fight," he nodded. But in his eyes, I saw it. The same respect I once saw in my husband's eyes when I carried our family through storms we thought we'd never survive. The ride home was quiet. My hands trembled slightly on my cane as I stepped out of the car and looked up at the house. My house. The one they tried to erase me from. The one they thought they had claimed. It stood there waiting, just as it had all these years, its windows glowing faintly with the light of dusk. But it no longer looked like a prison. It looked like mine again. I pushed open the gate and walked slowly toward the front steps. My legs ached, but every step was steady, purposeful. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and old wood. Their belongings were gone. The perfumes, the expensive coats, the jewelry boxes scattered carelessly across my counters. The house felt bare, but it was my emptiness now. My silence. My peace. I wandered from room to room, my fingertips brushing against the walls, the furniture, the frames. In the living room, I stopped in front of my husband's photograph. His eyes looked down at me, kind and steady, as if he had been watching all along. I kept it safe, I whispered. They tried to take it all, but I didn't let them. I hope I made you proud. My throat tightened, tears burning my eyes. But these weren't the hot, bitter tears I had shed in the darkness of betrayal. These were soft, cleansing. Tears of release. The garden called to me next. I stepped outside, the evening air cool on my skin. My roses stood there, half wilted, thirsty from weeks of neglect. I knelt carefully, my knees stiff, and touched their petals. "You're safe too," I murmured. "I'll take care of you again." I could almost hear my husband's voice, teasing me the way he used to. Flowers, like people, bloom when you don't give up on them. And I hadn't. Neighbors came in the following days. Mrs. Wilson was the first, her arms wrapping around me in a fierce hug. "We all knew something was wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "But you showed us all that no one should ever be silenced, no matter their age." I smiled, pressing her hand. "It wasn't just me. It was all of you too. You believed me when no one else would." Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People began to look at me differently, not as the frail widow down the street, but as a woman who had stood against betrayal and won. But deep inside, I knew my battle wasn't just about them. It was about me, because the truth is the scars remain. My son has not returned. No apologies, no explanations. His absence is its own punishment, but it leaves a wound in me that justice cannot heal. At night, I sometimes lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. Did I love him too much? Did I fail him somehow? Or did greed simply devour the boy I once held in my arms? I may never know the answer. And maybe that's the price of survival, that even victories leave you with shadows. But I refuse to let those shadows define me. Instead, I choose to carry the memories that still give me light. The laughter of my husband echoing through these walls. The soft voice of my daughter when she calls to check on me. The kindness of neighbors who never let me disappear completely. The law gave me back my house, my money, my inheritance. But what it truly gave me was my dignity, my voice, my place in this world. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and crimson, I stood at the front door with the keys in my hand. The very same keys my husband once pressed into my palm when he said, "This will always be yours." I turned them slowly, feeling the weight of metal and memory. They were more than just keys to a house. They were keys to survival, to strength, to justice reclaimed. I smiled, whispering to myself, they thought they owned me, but they forgot. I owned the keys all along. And with that, I stepped back into my home, the door closing behind me, not as a cage, but as a fortress. Mine, forever.